Hey everyone, welcome back to the iGaming experience. I'm Sam Bhatti, recording as always in the Zebra Studios here in beautiful Podgorica, Montenegro. And today's episode is going to hit at the core of the main reason for this whole podcast existing. And I think it's something that every newcomer to this industry will benefit from, even people with experience in other industries. I'm going to be talking about your first 90 days in the industry. I'll give you some realistic and actionable information that will help you move from just surviving in this industry to hopefully thriving in fairly short order. And I don't mean to sound too dramatic, but it really does feel like survival when you're starting in any new industry, and iGaming is certainly no exception. I've worked in several industries in my career, and over my time, I've found a few practices that have been absolutely huge for my development, right? Not just in getting promoted, but in actually gaining more skills and becoming actually more valuable. Because, like, here's the truth, right? iGaming can feel overwhelming. Any new job can feel overwhelming. iGaming, I found specifically, and I've seen it in others, there's a lot going on. It can feel very overwhelming. There are so many departments, so many acronyms, so many moving pieces, and so many different business models that are all happening at once. And the best part is that most people act as if everyone knows exactly what's going on, and they expect you to as well. It's completely normal to feel lost at the beginning. Completely normal. Don't feel bad. But if you understand how to learn quickly and where to focus your attention, how to become valuable early, right, you can build a foundation that sets you up for years of wins, years of upward movement, and what are we really talking about here? More power and more money. So if you can relate to what I just said, either about making more money or feeling a little bit overwhelmed, then feel free to use this episode as your roadmap, right? Crush your first 90 days, or you know what? Crush your next 90 days, even if it's not your first. So let's start with why 90 days? Why are these 90 days so important? Well, it's a somewhat arbitrary number, but it's about 3 months in. And the impression that you make early on, right, especially in the first couple of weeks, first month, that tends to stick, right? Not just with managers, but with your peers as well. So people remember the person who asked good questions, right? They remember the new person that followed through. They remember the person that helped them to move things forward, right? I mean, they remember a person that is memorable. I don't mean to define it with the word, but be memorable in this first little bit, and I'll give you some actionable tips on how to actually do that. So, step one is get the ball rolling. The first 90 days are not about being perfect or knowing everything. I've said this several times on this podcast. That's impossible in iGaming. You can't know everything. With experience, you can certainly learn more, but you're not going to know it all. Not a realistic goal. There's too much, and it's changing every day. So these first 3 months are really more about positioning yourself as someone who learns fast, who thinks clearly, and who contributes in a meaningful way. Like, in other words, your goal initially isn't mastery. Your goal is momentum. Get the ball rolling. All right. And before I get right into it, I'm sure some of you are thinking, I kind of alluded to this earlier. I've already passed my 90 days, so I guess it's too late to do these things. I know I would be thinking that. Well, I have good news for you and past me. You can do these things starting now. even if you already have some understanding of the industry, skip the parts that aren't relevant, but you can think of this as a 90-day level up plan. Now, even if you're an expert, if you try it all out, these things I'm about to tell you, I'm sure you're going to have at least one benefit. That's worth it, right? That one thing. I learned this lesson back when I used to buy a lot of fitness magazines. I was going to the gym and playing sports, and I had a pretty good understanding of how to work out and proteins, and you do backs and buys, chest and tries, carb loading, rest days, these types of things. I got it. So reading these magazines was almost entirely reading things I already knew, but in, I would say, every single one of them, I would find at least one thing new to try, or like a principle I hadn't considered. And some of those things are still benefiting me to this day, all right, decades later. So it all adds up. Okay, back to you. Your first month is all about learning the landscape, right? So you've got the ball rolling and you're trying to get some info now, right? Don't rush to become an expert. That will come. That's going to come later. Instead, focus on understanding the world you just stepped into. Okay, so let's plan your first 30 days, right? Your first week. Spend your first week learning the structure of the business. Your business specifically. Are you a supplier or an operator? Right? What products do you offer? Right? Is it casino, sportsbook? Is it both? Do you have crypto? What providers are integrated, or which geos do you target? Right? Where are your customers? Who are your key partners? Right? Who are your customers as well? Not just where, but who are they? The ultimate goal here is pretty simple, actually. It's to try and determine exactly how your company makes money. So get as much of the flow as possible. In fact, after you're done with this episode, check out episode 15 on how money flows in iGaming. That should give you a good enough of a base to get started and start thinking about these things. So start with the companies and services that your company deals with. Figure out where they sit in the industry and then start connecting dots. You need to write this down for real, draw a picture. This is going to take some brain power, and that's fine. Right? You're listening to this episode, so clearly you're motivated. So I don't think that'll be too much of a challenge for people as fired up as you that have gone this deep into the iGaming rabbit hole to find the iGaming experience. Okay. Next. Still within the first 30 days, get familiar with the industry vocabulary. So I'm not talking about memorizing every acronym, but you should recognize the basics. So you got GGR, NGR, CRM, PSP, KYC, RNG, LTV, and CPA. Did I miss something? Let me check my note. I don't see if I missed. No, I didn't miss anything. Those are the ones I wanted to mention. There's plenty of other acronyms, but let's keep it there for now. If you don't know what all of those acronyms I just listed mean without having to look it up, then this 90-day plan is going to sort that out. In fact, this podcast will kind of sort it out right now, but you need to go deeper. You don't need to be fluent, right? You just need to be comfortable enough to follow conversations. Right. Again, I did an episode on industry jargon and acronyms. I believe it was 4 or 5. The title was iGaming 101. So definitely check that out. But in this episode, just so I don't leave you hanging very quickly, as quick as I can, first acronym I said was GGR. GGR stands for, I imagine you know this if you've been listening to this podcast, but just in case you don't, GGR stands for gross gaming revenue, which is stake minus the wins of the player. NGR is net gaming revenue, which is GGR minus a bunch of other costs. Okay. CRM, the other acronym I mentioned, that stands for Customer Resource Manager, which basically is a spreadsheet to keep track of all of your customers. And it has a bunch of iGaming specific features to help you monitor and interact with your players. PSP stands for Payment Service Provider, which is a service operators need to integrate with in order to accept funds. So you can think of it like with an e-commerce site, they've got PayPal or Stripe. So iGaming has a whole bunch of different PSPs depending on the region and the type of payment that you want to take, the currency. What else did I say? KYC. KYC stands for Know Your Customer, which is the process of checking your customer's ID and like other documentation that they would have to submit depending on the rules of the regulatory body that your site is under. There may also be a liveness check, a few other things. And these checks are to make sure that the players are eligible to bet on your site. This is usually done by an automated service, but sometimes it's manual. Most popular by far is a company I'm actually a big fan of. They're called SumSub. I know that's super nerdy to be a fan of a company that does KYC checks, but they're actually pretty cool. They put out they have a good product, and they their website actually has some good information, which I think I'll talk about in a few episodes when I break down the resources I used to learn all this stuff. Where am I getting all this information from? Right? It's not all from my day to day. All right, what else did I say? RNG, huge one here. RNG stands for Random Number Generator. And that's basically a core function that casino games use to generate their results and make them fair. LTV, talked about it in the last episode, but if you don't remember or didn't listen to it, LTV stands for lifetime value, which is the total amount of money that a company expects to make from a player over their entire lifetime as a customer on their site. And also mentioned in the last episode is CPA. CPA stands for cost per acquisition. In some cases, it stands for cost per action, but that's more specific to affiliates. And so in this case, cost per acquisition, it's mainly how much it costs to get a user to register and deposit on your site. And as I said, I break this down in detail in the previous episode on acquisition and retention. So definitely check that out. Okay. Acronym time over. That's all of them. At least the basics for now. So you've got that base knowledge. What's next? Right? Or at least you're gaining that base knowledge. This doesn't have to be one then the other. You can do a few of these things simultaneously. So your next move is on product. Spend time learning the product. Play the games. Explore the sportsbook, right? Use your tech. Click on every menu. Competitors, right? Explore them. Create accounts. Even deposit some of your own money to play around. You'd be surprised how far $10 can go when you're getting on, especially some of these crypto sites where you can wager, fractions of a penny in some cases. And think of it like tuition, right? You got to pay to learn sometimes. It's not always free, but absolutely worth it. Diving in as a customer, it's super underrated. I was surprised at what an edge that gave me when I got into the industry. There's a lot of people that just don't use it. This is a job, and we all have our own journeys. We got here different ways, right? But knowing your own product from the business side and the customer side, it makes you really valuable, right? On top of just using it, you don't even have to try to. You are viewing the product the same way that a customer would. Okay. Now, if you've never placed a bet in your life, now is the time to try it out. Get in the game, spin some slots, play some crash games, do some pre-match and live sportsbook betting. Try out parlays, right? Do a cash out. What else? Bet on some random sports and some random markets. Like I've mentioned before, I love betting on live table tennis. I don't know why. I just find it fun. So get out there. You never know what'll tickle you. Just have fun with it, right? See what's out there. This honestly, it's fun, and this is one of the fastest ways to understand how everything connects. It really is. In fact, like, I don't know why I've not gotten to this before. This is a podcast for newbies. I should be just episode one should have been get in the game. It's fun. You learn, and again, it'll inform you on how your company makes money and how you can help them make more money. Maybe I should be a bit more tactful and say grow revenues. How about that? We're not. It sounds a bit brash to just say make money, but it's a business podcast. Let's talk business. Let's grow revenues. All right. So let's round off these 30 days. Finally, right in these first 30 days, ask questions. Right? A lot of them, but ask them strategically. Okay. Don't ask things that you could easily find using AI or Google. Okay. Ask questions that show you're trying to understand the bigger picture, right? That you value their experience and their perspective on it. People respect that. I've said this for years and years. You will be surprised at how forthcoming your colleagues can be, no matter how senior they are. Okay, so that's month one, right? Giving you some good tips there. Your second month is where you settle in a little bit. This is where you start to find your place, right? So at this point, you've been a month in, you should understand the basics of your company, right? And the product that you're selling, whatever that is within your company, and the basics of the industry, right? So I don't expect you to have any of these things fully understood, but you can now at least explain the basics to someone that doesn't know anything about iGaming, right? So you've got those things sorted. Now it's time to focus your attention on yourself. All right, it's about you. Pick your lane. As I've said many times, don't try to learn everything at the same time. iGaming is too big. And if you're in product, learn how features move through the roadmap. If you're in marketing, focus on acquisition channels and CRM. Learn some of those flows. If you're in tech, start understanding, hopefully you've already got some of it, but start understanding the integrations and the architecture on a deeper level, right? Dive in. In fact, that's going to fully unlock how this industry works if you're a technical person and you can dive in. If you're on the tech team, great. Or if not, speak to someone that's, a bit chatty on the tech team and see what insights you can get there. And as you're going through this process, this is actually also where you can start adding visible value, right? You can be taking notes in meetings. You can be volunteering to follow up on unclear tasks. And the scary part, actually, which is to start giving some answers instead of asking questions, right? So check out episode 14, where I break down how to get the most out of meetings. If you want a few extra tips to squeeze out from the advice I just gave. And there's some good tips in there that you can use from day one. So definitely check that out. In month two as well, something else that'll help you stand out is if you summarize your discussions in follow-up messages, right? Don't be spammy with it, but people have a lot of chats going on. And if you're approaching them afterwards, getting some context always helps, right? These small things that save other people time and brain power make you extremely valuable. And it helps keep the team aligned. And, either consciously or subconsciously, you'll get some credit for that. Another powerful move in month two or in this phase is to connect with one or two mentors internally, right? Not formal mentors. It's a bit early for that. You just met everyone, but just people who have been around long enough to explain things. And then maybe ask them, what do they wish they knew in their first 90 days? To just say, what mistakes do they see newcomers make in this company? These conversations can accelerate your understanding almost like nothing else, like insider info. It's almost cheating. In fact, I'd love to know what they tell you. I'm learning every day too. So one of the more selfish benefits of doing this podcast is that I am strengthening my own knowledge base while I'm sharing it with you. So win-win. Okay, so that's month 2. Right? Hit 60 days. So by day 60, your job is not to be an expert, but to understand how your role fits into the bigger engine that drives business. Right? You now know what needs to be done, and now it's time to see how to apply your skills, right? Your existing ones and the new ones you've just picked up. So let's move on to month 3. All right, let's see some action, because now we get to the final stretch of this intro period in your career. Day 60 to 9, right? This is where you transition from a new joiner, right? Someone who just got here, to someone who actually moves things forward and people count on. And at this point, this is when you should start taking ownership of tasks. Okay, not huge ones, but let's get some small or medium-sized tasks that you can complete well. And when you see ambiguity, help reduce it, right? When you spot a problem, you should know enough now that you can flag it and maybe suggest a potential solution, right? When you see something inefficient, you can document it, and when you're speaking to the right person or in the right situation, propose a fix. Right? And, related to all this is also the time to start building what I call cross-functional relationships, right? Because as I said a million times, in iGaming, there's nothing that exists in a silo, right? Everything touches each other. The task in marketing affects product. The decision of product is going to affect CRM. A new regulation is going to affect everyone, right? So knowing who to ask and how to collaborate becomes one of your greatest strengths, legit. Oh, and let me just plant this seed. Figure out who the real decision makers are. Okay, when I do an episode on what to do after the first 90 days, that info on your company decision makers will be huge. Right? There was something I've done like multiple times shortly after joining companies that I wanted to spend more time with. That it's always worked, right? I call it like my level up list. So wait for that one. It's legit gold, honestly. And yes, I'm going to leave you hanging on that. Okay. There will be an episode, maybe 3 or 4 episodes from now. So not too long. And you've got 90 days anyway. So what's your rush? You've got other things to do. So, all right. By the end of your first 90 days, let's simplify this. Your goal is that people should feel like you're making their jobs easier. If you can achieve that, you're already ahead of the curve. All right. Now, here's a little bit more specific that has also been massive for me in my career. And that's to start generating a report. Sounds nerdy, but keep listening, right? At first, just keep it for you and keep it high level, right? Just have it focus on the areas that you control. So find the key metrics or the KPIs, new acronym there, the KPIs that you can track and start tracking. Let me just break that down real quick. So KPI stands for, you're going to hear this a million times. KPI stands for key performance indicator. All right, it gets thrown around all the time in meetings. And usually it's a number that shows how well you're doing in a particular area. So like in iGaming, like a simple example is the marketing team is tracking the performance of a campaign. And one of the KPIs would be the number of first-time depositors. Cool. So back to this report. I start with a weekly snapshot of where I'm at. And that includes my top 3 priorities this week, my top 3 for next week, and any potential risks that could, or blockers that could prevent me from completing them. And over a few weeks to a few months, this snapshot, right, this little snippet of a few bullet points, it should turn into a full-on report as you learn, with several more KPIs added. Right? So you've got a wider snapshot now of how everything is going and you've got some ability to track it. And at that point, it's probably worth sharing with your manager. In every case where I've done this, the manager, if I just shared them my reports, but I'm just using this for myself, they instantly wanted it, and my value just shot up. Right? Even if you never share it with anyone, though, it's going to help you massive. So, regardless of if you know what position you're in, I think that this is going to be worth it. It's kind of a universal tip here. There's not many of those, so give it a shot. All right, so that's your first 90 days, generally mapped out, right? Giving you some good things to work with. You can obviously take it your own way, find your own detail, but I think that if you were to action some or all of these things, guaranteed you're gonna level up. All right, guaranteed this is going to move you faster than if you're just going in there without a plan. Because going in there without a plan, well, that will lead to mistakes. So let's talk about some mistakes that people make in their first 90 days. And, not to judge, but I am. And let's help you not fall into the same traps. So the first mistake is trying to impress too quickly. Some newcomers feel pressure, right? They want to show expertise that they don't yet have, and they end up overcomplicating things. Trust me when I say that nobody expects you to know everything. What we want to see, right? The experienced people they're in the company, and you've got someone new coming in. What we want to see is clarity and curiosity, not ego. Okay. Another mistake is hiding confusion, right? It's kind of the opposite. So, in fact, I should make the thumbnail for this video that meme with Chris Pratt. I have no idea what the difference between GGR and NGR is, and at this point, I'm too afraid to ask. But so, by the way, if you don't know the difference between GGR and NGR, go back and listen to almost every episode before this one. All right, I break it down: gross gaming revenue versus net gaming revenue. If you just want to search it yourself right now, but definitely know the difference. Okay, so back to being confused. There is absolutely no shame in saying to someone that you're not familiar with that term. Could they please explain it? In fact, that's expected from people new to the industry. Not embarrassing. What is embarrassing is pretending to understand and then making the wrong decision and losing credibility in front of your peers. So even if you're not new to the industry, terms outside of your department are fair game. Okay. Now, if you've been in the game for a while and there are terms you keep hearing and you don't know them, stop right now. Look them up. Right? Google it. AI, like trusted colleague, check this podcast, whatever. Find out right now. If there's a bunch of terms flying around in your company and you don't know what they are, you got to know. Get into it. All right. Third key mistake, which is so easy to fall into, is avoiding documentation. Right? If you skip this early, it just snowballs and it's so easy to just never get started. But iGaming is full of moving pieces, tons of them, right? It's like a three-dimensional chess. And if you don't document what you learn, you will start forgetting. Right? Details come in and they go quick. So create your own glossary. Right? Sounds like, I know it's super nerdy. I said to make a report. Now I'm telling you to make a glossary. And I'm going to make it even nerdier. Build like a small personal wiki that your glossary is a part of. Right? Your own personal knowledge base within iGaming and within your company. Future you is going to love and thank present you. Right? This is one of those extra effort things that will seem daunting at first, but once you get started, it's basically a couple of hours of like focus work followed by like a minute here and there. Seriously, like review it regularly until you can speak intelligently on everything on there. And you're going to be way ahead of the game. It sounds like a lot of work. I'm telling you, it's really just the first 1 or 2 blocks of work to get everything down that takes the effort. And then the rest of it is just adding little bits, refreshing your knowledge, Cool. All right. Personal wiki. Do it. All right. Final mistake I'll talk about here is somewhat related to hiding confusion, and it's focusing only on your own tasks without understanding the context. Right? Gaining context. I'm going to talk a lot about this. Gaining context is like gaining power. Like the more you understand how everything fits together, the more valuable you become. It'll show in all areas, literally all of them. Okay, so let's get more positive. That's enough about what people do wrong. Let's talk about acceleration. Okay, the things that make you learn things 3 times faster than the average newcomer. Right? You thought I was done with a personal wiki? No, I was not done. There's a few more here. Okay. And this is very conceptual and it can get a little bit on the philosophy side, but just bear with me. First, ask why before how. All right. And again, this goes right back to context. If you understand why a feature exists, right? Why a bonus structure works the way that it does, why a campaign targets a certain segment, or like why a specific regulation matters, then you can figure out the how much easier. Let's say your company wants to increase daily engagement. Before you start suggesting, hey, let's add a daily spinning wheel or let's add a tournament, ask what the specific goal is for the campaign. Like, just go a little deeper. What prompted this request from, let's say, the product team? Are they looking to cross-sell current players from casino to sportsbook? Are they looking to acquire completely new players? Is there a marketing campaign tied to this feature? Get some answers. And with that additional context, you can really hone in and deliver on whatever the ultimate goal is. Context. Get that context. Second, this is going to sound funny, I think, to a lot of people, but replay conversations. Yeah, I mentioned this in the episode on getting the most out of meetings. After important meetings, take 2 minutes to summarize what you heard. Right? Hopefully you took notes and you're just adding some context, again, back to the word context, to those quick things that you had jotted down in the meeting. But just really replay what you heard and what information was shared, what stuck out to you. And this will really help that key info stick and make you sharper in the next discussion. Right. And again, big old favor to future you. Right? You're going to get some love from future you, guaranteed. Okay. Here's another one is build relationships. This is actually, I mean, I see they're all massive. This one is absolutely massive. The fastest learners are the ones who have people that they can message privately and just say, hey, can you explain this part to me? Like, let's not slow the meeting down, but I don't know what we're talking about. I have several examples in my career of colleagues that helped me massively when I needed it. And on the flip side, I've paid it forward plenty. I mean, I guess I'm doing that right. I'm literally doing that right now, right? By being generous with colleagues that leaned on me for information and advice in the past, and now I'm sharing that with you, right? In fact, like, you know, I should say the major project that I'm working on right now, that came from a relationship with a former colleague that I didn't work with for that long, but I was probably the most forthcoming with him when it came to industry knowledge. He was somewhat new to the industry. And even after we stopped working together, he would hit me up every couple of months to discuss something, you know, that he wasn't totally sure about. He was still playing around in the industry. And that led to some questions about a project that he was launching, and that eventually led to us working together again. So, you know, funny how that happens when you're generous. Sometimes this stuff comes back to you. I think there's a word for that. Anyways. You know, actually, it reminds me of like a fantastic saying. I'll get this slightly wrong, I'm sure, but the main point is defining luck as the intersection between opportunity and preparation. I think I made that confusing. Okay, that's a confusing way of saying it. Let me rephrase that. Luck is where preparation and opportunity meet. I think that's the actual expression. That's better. And so, you get yourself ready, and when that opportunity hits, you're there to seize it. But a key point there is getting prepared isn't a static thing. Okay, it's not a static state. It's something that you reach and then you maintain it and even keep trying to improve and be more prepared. Right? It's like having a fit body. Like if you get really ripped and then you stop putting in the work, then your gains are going to fade really quickly. Right? So be ready. Be ready, people. Opportunity, it doesn't warn you when it's coming. You got to get yourself ready. Okay. Last tip on leveling up your learning is to stay curious about the product, right? I said before to be curious, but now I want you to stay curious. So when a new player signs up or they deposit or receives a bonus or just touches your tech, interacts with your tech in any way, there's a lesson there. Okay, if you're not an operator, you don't have a bunch of tech, then just change player to client and note how the relationship started, right? How did it grow or didn't grow? What touch points were there along the way? And in any case, try to look through the eyes of people who you want to serve, right? So your customers, your clients, any third parties that you want to do business with. Really try to put yourself in their shoes and think of what you would need to see to join your site or sign with your company, right? So think of it like if you're on the outside looking in. And bit of a controversial tip here, but using AI to do some role playing here is useful. And yeah, I've done it. Okay, yeah, you put in a prompt that's describing your situation, and you tell your AI tool to play the roles of your target clients, and you get a couple of dummy conversations, and it absolutely has helped me prepare. I know it sounds weird, but AI is weird. Live with it. There are definitely insights there. Okay, so I'm thinking I could have skipped this whole section by just saying the word context a dozen times. Okay, context, context, context. The industry and how you can be more effective becomes much clearer the more you have. That's all. So, what does winning the first 90 days actually look like? Right? You don't want to just exist, or you want to win. It doesn't mean that you become an expert. Okay, you're after your first 90 days, you followed all this stuff, you're not an expert. Okay, it means you've done 4 things. Right? Number 1, you understand the basics of the industry and the product. Number 2, you've become someone people feel comfortable coming to. Right? Not because you know everything, but because you communicate clearly and think logically. And I would say most importantly, you're showing that you have the goal of adding value, right? Even if you're not necessarily adding a ton of value now, you're showing that that's what you're shooting towards. Massive. Number 3, you've taken ownership of meaningful tasks and followed through. Right? I think that one explains itself. People like other people that do what they say they're going to do. Okay, and number 4, kind of related, but you've shown curiosity, you've shown humility, and you've shown consistency, right? Those are 3 traits that will carry you the furthest in this space and pretty much any space. That's certainly not iGaming specific. So if you've achieved those 4 things over this last 90 days or the next 90 days, you're not just surviving iGaming, right? You're, as I said this, you're thriving. You're building a real career here. So that's the roadmap. That's the first 90 days in iGaming. Explained somewhat simply and honestly. This industry is massive. It's fast. It's exciting. And it's extremely overwhelming, or it can be. But if you approach it with intention, if you ask good questions, if you learn the right things in the right order, and if you show people that you're reliable and curious, then you will grow more in 90 days than many people grow in years, literally. If they ever hit it, right? Be intentional. And that's it. That's your 90 days. So thanks for listening to the iGaming Experience. I'm your host, Sam Bhatti, as usual, coming from the Zebra Studios in Podgorica, Montenegro. And, I often say this, but if you're still listening and you're new, definitely share this with someone else that's new. Because I think of all the episodes that I've done, this would probably give someone that's just joining the industry the most comfort, at least to get going. And then maybe they might want to check out some other podcast, some other episodes. But give this one a share with someone that you think will use it. Again, we're not trying to blow up. We're a small club here at the iGaming Experience, but invite only. Bring people in. All right. Thanks for listening. Catch you next week.